Hi there, and welcome to a project video where you'll build and deploy a group video chat application. This is not a video chat like any other. Rather, it's a conference video chat app that supports multiple people at the same time. With screen sharing capabilities, private and group messaging, admin controls, polls, and much more, this Agora video chat application is the best group video conference chat app that you can currently find on YouTube and on the entire internet. In this video, you'll learn how to use Agora's chat builder to quickly build a scalable video chat application. You're also going to learn how to work in large code bases of code that you didn't write. It's important to be able to add new features to already existing apps. Before we dive into the project, I have an important announcement for you. For quite some time now, I have been working on something big. I'm creating a custom platform where you'll be able to learn by creating even better and more professional projects. It'll take a long time to turn this into a reality, but I want you to make the most important decisions during the process. So, click the mailing list link down in the description so that you can stay up to date and choose which projects will be built first. Big news coming soon. With that said, let's dive straight into the video. To start creating our project, you can click the link down in the description. It's going to lead you to Agora's app builder. Agora built an entire builder for live video chat and streaming applications. They say no coding required, but we can get their entire code base and add external features on top of it if you know how to code. And I know you do. So I'm going to teach you how to take all of the Agora's amazing features that they give you right out of the box and how to add new functionalities on top of them. In our case, I'm going to teach you how to add a polling system, but you can add anything you want. Any feature you can think of, you can code it and add it to their code base. So let's get started. We can start by clicking the Try It Now button. In here, you'll have to sign up or log in. In my case, I already have an account, so I'm going to click Login. And once you log in, you'll be redirected to their Create a Project page. In here, you can see that you can create a project off of some templates like video meetings or coming soon online classes and virtual events. And you can see that I already have one project built. But in this case, I want to teach you everything from scratch, so I'm going to create a new project with you. Let's give it a product name. I'm going to say JSM Chat App. And this is going to be a video meeting application. Let's click Next. And once you're here, it's going to show you how your application looks like, and you can change some general information. So let's see what changes can you make. We can go to Product Information, change the name and the product ID. You can also change the description right here. So I'm simply going to give it a more meaningful name, something like JavaScript Mastery Community. And under description, we can say the real-time engagement platform for meaningful and let's say developer connections. Great. Now let's go back. Let's change the theme. You have a lot of predefined options. I'm going to go for this one. Let's pick a dark theme. You can also change some primary and secondary colors or even add a background image. Now let's go back and let's go to logos. In here, you can enter your primary logo. I'm going to click Remove Image and then select my file. There we go. I've entered my JavaScript Mastery logo at the top and that looks much better. Now I'm going to click back and let's check what authentication offers. In here, you can enable Google OAuth, Microsoft OAuth, Slack, and even Apple. For now, I'm going to leave these off and let's see what we have under conferencing screen. You can enable more advanced things like PST and dial-in, pre-call screen, chat, cloud recording, screen sharing, and even video encryption. I'm going to leave these settings as they are, and that's going to be it for all the settings. We can also see how the app looks like on mobile, and that's going to be it. Now, instead of deploying our app, we simply want to download the source code because we want to modify it ourselves. So let's go ahead and first click Save. It's going to say error in following field, product ID is a required field. So let's simply go back to product information and let's enter a product ID. In this case, let's do something like JSM chat app. Great. Let's click save, and now we're good. It took a few seconds, but now we are ready to deploy our app, and then we're going to download the source code. So you have to click deploy your app, and then as you can see, I already tried it out, but I'm going to do it one more time to show you. So the first and the main step we have to do right now is to deploy our backend to Heroku. So to do that, you can simply click deploy backend. In my case, I'm going to redeploy. A pop-up is going to appear. You will have to either log in or sign up to Heroku, and everything else should be instantaneous. It's going to say pending for a few minutes, so let's wait for it to be done, and then we'll be right here. And there we go. Our backend is deployed. And that's the only thing we had to deploy for now, because now we're going to add new code to our frontend. That's why we don't need to deploy it right now. So what you can do is simply close this window, and then we are ready to download the source code. So let's click it, and a zip folder was immediately downloaded. I've just opened it with my zip application, and I'm simply going to extract it to my desktop. Once you've extracted it, you can locate it on your desktop, open an empty Visual Studio Code window or any other code editor of choice, and then you can simply drag and drop that folder into your code editor. There we go, it opened it up. I'm going to make this just a bit bigger. And as you can see, there aren't a lot of things there right off the bat. We simply have some configs, backgrounds, and most importantly, a package.json. In here, you can see that we have a start script, but we also have a README with all the steps. So let's go to view, and then go to terminal. Let's clear it, and now let's follow the steps. Open a terminal. The second step says to run npm i and then npm start. You have to have Node.js version 14 installed, so if you don't already, just make sure to go to Node's download page, simply Google Node, and click download on version 14 or later. Great, let's go ahead and type npm install. Our application has been installed, and now we can simply type npm start. The Agora app builder just ran, and it asked us a question. Do we want to install or build? Well, first of all, we want to install. So now it's going to check for Node and create all of the project directories. It's going to take some time to download the entire frontend code for this application and to install all of the frontend dependencies. So it might take a few minutes, just give it some time and we'll be right back. Everything successfully got installed and we are ready to press enter to continue. That's it. We can simply leave the process of reinstalling by pressing Ctrl and then C. There we go. What we have to do now is re-navigate to JSM chat app or whatever name you gave it. So we can do cd JSM chat app. And let's see what do we have in that folder. This is going to be a huge folder because what Agora allows you is not only to build a frontend application, at the same time you're building frontend for web devices and also Android and iOS. So there's quite a lot of folders, but don't worry, it's all written in React. So let's visit the package.json to know which commands can we run. Right there, you can run Android, iOS, and then web. Web is what we should be focused on. So to run web, we're simply going to run npm run web. Again, to run this, make sure that you're not in the root directory. You need to cd into your directory name and then run npm run web. After you do that, it's going to compile and it should open up in the browser for you. And there we go. Localhost 9000/create. JavaScript mastery community with our logo and the real engagement platform for meaningful developer connections. In here, we can name our meeting. Let's do something like community meeting. And we are ready to create a meeting. There we go. Our meeting has been created. We got the attendee URL as well as the host URL. In this case, I'm going to copy the attendee URL and I'm going to start the meeting as a host. There we go. It's looking for video input and it's looking for the microphone. Let's set JSM as my name and let's join the room. Just like that, we are inside of the room and we are waiting for participants. So if I open up another tab and go to this URL, we should be able to join as a guest as well. There we go. I'm going to disable the video and let's call this one a guest. We've joined the room and we can immediately see an abundance of features that Agora offers. Here is the name of the meeting. We can copy the URL. We can enable or disable audio, video, and we can even turn on the screen share. In here, we can see the list of participants. We can copy the meeting invite and we can disable or enable both video or audio for each participant individually if we are the host. Then we have group messages. So if I type something here, something like test, it should appear right here. You see, we even got a notification. But we can also send private messages. For example, JSM is going to message our guest. So if you type hello, there we go. There's one private message from JSM. This works wonderfully. Then we can also open up different views. For example, see just one main video or see multiple people like this. And finally, we have our controls. If you're not the host, you can only see the input device. But if you are the host and go to settings, you can mute all audios, mute all videos, and do all kinds of other things, which we're going to implement in this video. So this was just a short preview of what this app can do already in just a few minutes. But now we're going to go into the code and I'm going to teach you how you can add your own features to it and make it completely your own. So without any further ado, let's see how we can do that. First, we can close this terminal and now we can get to our own feature. The feature that we are going to implement is going to be a polling system. The host of the group chat will be able to create a poll, have a question and 4 different answers. And then in real time, all participants of the conversation will be able to vote and everybody will be able to see the results in the real time. So we can head to a file called host control view. And here's a great tip. There are a lot of files and folders here. So just so you don't have to search, use the control P and then simply search for host control view. This is a great tip that I use for bigger applications because you can easily traverse your entire project. Host control view, done. We can go to chat, that's done. Join phrase, that's done as well. So now let's go to host control view. Each file in Agora's application is going to have this copyright right there, but we can ignore that for now. The second thing that you can also notice is that this is written in TypeScript. You can notice that by the TSX extension, but don't worry about that. As you can see, it's mainly just plain JavaScript. So inside of our host control view, we can add some inputs. And we can do that just below this last view by doing text. And then inside of that text, we can simply say create a poll. We can also give it a style, and that style is simply going to say style.heading. That style has already been declared, so you don't have to worry about writing it out. Now let's see where this create a poll is going to pop up in our application. Our host control view is visible if you are a host, and then you can go to settings. Right here, you can see we have host controls and there's also create a poll. So let's add the settings for our poll just below that text. And you can notice that we are using some components like view and text from React Native. This is not a React Native application. Right now, we are only running it on web. But what Agora allows you to do is to have this application running on React Native as well, meaning native Android and iOS applications. But in this case, we'll simply use the web version. So now that we have this view, inside of there, we are going to have a text input. This text input is going to be a self-closing tag. And inside of there, we can have a value, as we always do with inputs. We are also going to have the onChange text property, which we're going to leave empty for now. And we're also going to have a placeholder. Our placeholder is simply going to say something like poll question. Great. Now you might notice that this text input is not imported yet, and we can import it from something called atoms. Agora created a lot of different components that you can reuse, and one of these components is going to be the text input. If you use the tip that I showed you earlier, Control P, and then that's going to be text input. You can immediately notice that under src and atoms, there is a text input component. So this is a really handy tip to traversing the application. Now what we can do is simply say import text input from atoms text input. Great. So what is going to be the value and the onChange text of this input? Well, we could declare them right here as the state fields, but we will need to use the values and the change text across our entire application, not just in this file. That's why we have to create a context. That's correct, you're also going to learn how to create a React context in this video. So before we continue with creating this input, I'm simply going to comment it out for now, and we can go ahead and create a custom context. To create our poll context, we're going to go to components, and then straight in here, we're going to create a new file. And that file is going to be called poll context.jsx. Inside of there, we're going to import create context, and that is going to be imported from React. And then we also need to import React itself as a default import, and alongside create context, we're also going to use state. So we can import use state. Now with every React context, we first have to export the context itself. So we can say export const poll context. And that is going to be equal to a simple function call of create context. Now we also need a context provider. So we can say const poll provider is going to be equal to, in there we get the props, but more importantly, we want to get the children out of the props. Children is a prop that every single React functional component has. Now inside of there, we want to declare everything. More specifically, we want to declare a state of this question we wanted to use here. So to do that, we can say const question and set question is equal to, and that's simply going to be use state, where at the start, the question is going to be an empty string. Let's say that that's all we need for now. So once you have that, you simply want to have a return, and then inside of there, you want to call the poll context dot provider, and then you want to give it value. Whatever you pass into this value, you'll be able to access across your entire application. So let's simply close this component for now. And then inside of the value, we're simply going to pass an object that's going to contain the question as well as the set question. So we will be able to access this entire state across our entire application. Now we're going to wrap our entire application with the poll provider. So we have to return everything that's inside of it. And that's exactly what the children prop does. Whatever you wrap with this poll provider, it's going to be returned inside of it. Great. We created our poll provider, and we can simply call export default poll provider to export it. Now we have to go to our app.tsx to use this poll provider. Again, we're going to use that trick with Control P, and we're going to open our app.tsx. Inside of here, just below all of the imports, we're also going to import poll context provider, and that will be coming from /components, and it's going to be poll context. The only thing you have to do with this is you have to wrap your entire application with it. So just below the return, we're going to open up a new component and have the poll context provider there. I'm going to copy the ending tag and simply put it at the end, just before the closing parenthesis. There we go. Now our entire application has access to our context state. Now you might be wondering, how can we actually use that state? So let's go into our host control view and let's make use of that question state we created in the context. Inside of here, we can first import our context. So we can say import, that's going to be poll context as a named import in curly braces from, and then we can simply say /poll context. Great. Of course, we also need the use context from React, and we are already importing that. So just below, we can say const, we can destructure question and also set question. And that's gonna be coming from use context, and in there we simply pass the poll context. Great. Now we have access to the question as well as the set question. The only thing we have to do with this text input now is simply pass the question as the value as well as the set question as the onChange text. Let's save it and take a look. We're going to rejoin the room and go to our settings. There we go. Create a poll, and in here we have our poll question where we can type. Now we need to have 4 different answers. So let's create the state for that, and then let's create different fields. We can start by creating the state for our answers. More specifically, what we can do is say const, that's going to be a state, so we need to destructure it in an array, and then we can say answers and also set answers. That's going to be plural because we have more, and that's going to be use state, and then inside of there we're going to put an empty array, but we're going to spread it to multiple lines, and now we want to create different options. Each option is going to be an object, more specifically an object that's going to have the option property set to an empty string at the start, and also the number of votes, which is going to be a simple votes property inside of that object at the start set to 0. And then you can duplicate this as many times as you want, however many answers you want to have. In my case, I'm going to go for 4. Now you already know the drill. We want to pass those values to our poll context provider value. So inside of here, I'm gonna say answers as well as the set answers. Just by doing that, we can now use this state inside of our host control view. So at the top, just alongside questions and set questions, we can just import answers and set answers as well. What we can do right now is just below this text input, we can add a break tag to have some space, and we want to map over the answers. We can do that by opening a logical block and then simply saying answers.map. Now there are going to be 4 answers, and we don't want to have curly braces here. We want to have simple parentheses because we want to instantly return something for each answer. Now as parameters to the map, we are going to get the answer itself. So we can say answer here, and also the index of a specific answer we're currently looping on, and also the index of the specific answer. We won't be needing this answer variable, so a good practice is to simply put an underscore there because that's a parameter we don't need to use. Now, what do we want to return for each answer? And the answer is going to be a simple div that's going to have a key equal to I, and also a break tag at the top, and just below that, an actual input. So we can say text input. That text input is going to be a self-closing tag, and it's going to have a few properties. First of all, it's going to have a value, and the value is going to be equal to answer.option. And now that I'm looking at it, we actually do need the answer. So I don't know, what was I thinking? That's great. We actually do need the answer we're looping over. Great. Then we're also going to need the onChange text, and we can create that as a function where we get the value of a specific text, and then we want to call the set answers. But now this is going to be just a bit tougher because we're not simply setting one individual answer. We need to update the entire array of answers, but only update the one we're currently changing. So first we put an empty array there, but we don't want that to be empty. What we want to do is we want to spread answers.slice, more specifically from slice to the I element. So we want to spread all of the answers from 0 to I. And then we only want to update the one we're currently changing. So just next to that answers.slice, we can add the new changed element by saying option is equal to value. That's where we're actually changing the option. The number of votes is still going to be 0. And then after the option we changed, we also need to spread all of the elements that came after the option we were changing. And that's going to be answers.slice And now we're slicing from I plus 1 until the end. If you're going until the end, you don't have to pass a second parameter. I know this might be a bit hard to understand, so let me try spreading it into multiple rows. So we have one array that we want to update our answers with. And you can see that it is array just by doing this. There we go, one array. Now inside of there, we are first spreading all of the elements that come before the element we want to change. So we do slice from 0 to the element we want to change. Then we have that famous element we want to change. So what we're doing, we're creating a new option and we are simply updating the value of that option. And finally, after we change it, we just want to spread all of the elements that came after the element we want to spread. And that is our array. Now I'm going to bring this back to one line. And we're going to need just one more property on this text input, and that's going to be a placeholder. So we can put a placeholder here. And the placeholder is going to be a dynamic string. So we can use template strings and say poll answer. And that's going to be I plus 1 because we start from 0. In this case, we don't want to say 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. I'm missing an E here, and that is going to be it. Now, since we are working in TypeScript, our linter is complaining that our parameter answer implicitly has a type of any. Since this is not a TypeScript course, we're going to leave that be, but usually you do want to assign a type to each specific variable. For example, an answer should be a string. But for now, again, this is not a TypeScript course. If you do want me to make one like that, definitely let me know. TypeScript videos coming in the future. With that said, we mapped over the inputs now. So let's see if we can see that in the browser. I'm going to enter my display name, join the room, and we're going to open the options. And would you look at that? Create a poll question, and 4 different answers. Now, if we've done the logic correctly, we should be able to add values for each thing, and they should be able to change normally. Again, it might be weird that I'm saying that, but if we didn't code that set answers part correctly, all of these answers would be messed up. While changing the first one, some other things might change, and so on. But looks like we set up the logic correctly. Now that we have the question and the answers, we need a button that's going to trigger a poll that's going to appear at the center of the screen. So let's do that right now. We can give some space to this view because I've noticed that there wasn't a lot of space between this text create a poll and our answers. So we can simply give a style here. We can do it inline by saying margin top, which is going to be equal to 20 pixels. Great. Now below this view, we're going to create one final view, and this view is going to have a style equal to style.btn container. Inside of there, as you might notice, we are going to have a primary button. This button is going to be a self-closing component, which we also have to import. This primary button is similar to the secondary button, so we can simply duplicate the line and change the text to primary button. Great. Now let's add some parameters to it. More specifically, it's going to have an onPress function like this, and that's simply going to be a callback function where we're going to do something on click. Also, it's going to have a text property, and that text is simply going to say start poll. So the main question is, what do we want to do on press? Well, first of all, we're going to open up our modal. So we can say set is modal open, and that's going to be set to true. Now, as you might notice, we still haven't created this set is modal open variable or state setter. So what we can simply do is go ahead and create it. That's also going to be coming from poll context. And I'm going to add it just below our question by saying const is modal open, as well as the set is modal open. That's going to be equal to use state, and at the start is going to be set to false. Now we also have to take these two variables and simply pass it to our poll context provider. Great. Now back in our host control view, now inside of here, we can use our set is modal open. Great. And we are setting that to true. But that itself is simply a state, a switch on and off. It's not doing anything by itself. So let's go ahead and create an entire poll component. That's going to be our next step. And we can do that by creating a new component. So inside of here, we can create a new file, and I'm going to name it poll.jsx. Inside of here, we can import a few things. More specifically, we can import React, and then in curly braces, use state, use effect, and also use context. So as you can see, we're using a lot of React hooks. We can say from, and that's coming from React. And then we're going to need two things from external packages. Most importantly, we're going to need a modal from react-modal, which is a package we haven't yet installed, and also import in curly braces line from RC progress. That's going to be a progress showing a percentage of how many people voted for one specific option. Now, as you might have figured out, we haven't yet installed these packages. So what you can do is go to View, Terminal, press Ctrl+C to stop it from running, then Yes, and then clear it. Now you can simply run npm I, and we can install react-modal, as well as the rc-progress. Great. This is going to take just a minute, and then we'll be right back. Once your package is installed, you can simply run again npm run web. Let's check our application in the browser. I'm going to type a name, and let's join the room. Let's check our host options, and everything seems to be fine. We are ready to start creating a poll. I'm going to close my terminal so we have more space to code, and I'm going to create a const poll component. So const poll is going to be our functional React component, and just so we don't forget, we can instantly export it. Export default poll. Inside of here, we want to actually use and show the data, the questions and the answers that users post. So we also have to import React context. We can do that right here. Import poll context in curly braces from, and that's going to be /poll context. Now, as we already learned, we can use that context by saying const in curly braces, and then we take the things that we need. We're going to take question, also set questions. We're going to also need answers. In this case, we're going to rename answers to vote data. You can do that by using the colon. We're also going to use the variable set answers, as well as the is modal open and set is modal open. Quite a lot of things. And this is going to be equal to use context, and we simply pass in the poll context and close it. Quite a long line, but we have everything that we need in here. We will also have to create a few states that are going to be only in the poll, more specifically const, and that's going to be the total votes, which is the number of total votes. So that's going to be total votes, set total votes, and at the start, they're going to be set to 0. And then we also have to have a Boolean state field, which is going to say, has the user voted or no? So we can say voted and set voted. That's going to be equal to the use state, and at the start, it's going to be set to false. Now is the time that we start creating the JSX for our poll. And we can do that by returning, of course. And inside of there, we're first going to have a modal. The modal we are importing from React modal. That modal is going to have a few properties, so I'm going to expand this. More specifically, is going to have the isOpen property, which is going to be equal to isModalOpen coming from the context. We're also going to have onRequestClose, and in here we simply want to call the close modal function. Right now we don't yet have it, but let's code it out. That's going to be const close modal, just a function. And in here, we want to reset all of the states. More specifically, set the isModalOpen to false, Also set the number of total votes to be 0. Also set the voted thing to be false. We also want to set the question to be equal to an empty string, same as it was in the start, and also set the answers. We need to set them to be an array of 4 empty options. So I'm going to go back to our context, and I'm going to copy these 4 options and paste them inside of the array, which is the answers. With that, we have our close modal function, and it's simply resetting all of the states. Then we want to have a content of the modal, which is going to be simply poll modal. And finally, we want to have some styles. So we can say style is equal to styles.custom_styles. Now, these custom styles haven't yet been created. There aren't a lot of styles, just a few for the actual modal itself. So what we can do is we can create a new styles file. More specifically, I'm going to create a new file in the components called poll_styles.js. And again, there aren't going to be many styles. In this case, they all fit on the same screen, 33 lines. Again, just some custom styles for the modal, for the button, and some flex positioning. The code for this entire file is going to be linked in the description. So just make sure to copy it, come back, paste it, and we should be good to go. Let's go back to the modal, and we of course have to import those styles. We can do that by simply saying import styles from /poll_styles. Great, our modal seems to be done, and now might actually be a good time to test it out. So for now, I'm simply going to create a div inside of here, and we're going to create an h1 that's going to contain our question. If we can see the modal, and if we can see the question, that means that our context variables are correctly transferring the data from our host control view to our poll. But of course, we are never actually rendering the poll. So the question is, where are we going to render this poll component? We want to render our poll just where our video is. So we're going to use that same trick one more time to go to video call.tsx. Inside of here, we want to import our poll component by saying import poll from /components and /poll. Great. This file is quite long. It has about 500 lines. So this might now be a good opportunity to show you another tip. If you type Ctrl+G, you can enter the line number you want to go to. In this case, we want to go to 323. This is where we want to put our poll. So one more time, Ctrl+G, and then the number of the line you want to go to. Just below the opening tag of this view, we can simply render our self-closing poll component. That is all that you need to do. Great. We have our poll rendered in our video call. We also have our host control view with a button that sets the isModal open to true once we click it. And we can also set the poll question. Then that's going to trigger the context. The context is going to send the isModal open information all the way to our poll, and then our modal is going to know if it is open or closed, and then we're going to render our question. Now, let's see if all of this actually works, or am I just talking nonsense? Before testing it out, just to make sure our code was actually applied, I'm going to press Ctrl+R to reload the page. And it looks like our application crashed. Let's go back to the code. I'm going to open up the terminal by going to View and then Terminal. And it looks like it says can't resolve Sentry browser in JavaScript Mastery community. I've noticed this before, but the application seemed to be working. This error came just after we installed our npm packages. And more specifically, it's saying resource busy or locked, dump stack. So as we usually do on JavaScript Mastery, I wasn't simply going to skip through this error and pretend nothing happened. We're actually going to solve it together, see what this is about, and hopefully that's going to help you solve future errors that happen to you. Usually when I get these weird errors, I simply stop the terminal from running and clear the console, and what we're going to do is completely delete the node modules and try to install them one more time. So just right click them, click delete, and it is going to take a bit of time because there are a lot of packages. So wait until this line stops moving, and then we're going to install our packages again. The error we've gotten just now usually happens for me when I'm using npm. So now I'm going to try to install the packages by simply running yarn. Yarn is going to install all of our packages, and if you don't have yarn already, just make sure to Google yarn download, and the process should be incredibly simple. While this is going, I can simply tell you a bit more about yarn. Yarn is basically the npm alternative, and some people prefer it nowadays. It seems to be a lot faster than npm, so if this actually works, it might be a good idea to switch to yarn entirely. The packages have been installed, and let's simply try running yarn run web. And it's compiling, and let's wait to see if we fixed our issue. And there we go. The app actually compiled. This might be a great sign to switch to yarn entirely. So if you see me using yarn in the future, this is the reason why. Now that we got that figured out, I'm simply going to close my terminal, and let's continue where we left off. And that was testing our poll. We are back in the browser. I'm going to name our meeting JSM meeting, create a new meeting, and simply start the meeting as a host. Now I'm going to add a display name of JSM and join the room. We can go to our host settings, create a question, which is going to be something like, where are you from? And then answers right now don't matter because we are showing only the question. So I'm going to type 1, 2, 3, 4 and click start poll. And would you look at that? A modal showed up, which means that our isModal is working. And also we have our question here, which means that we are correctly transferring the data from our host control view to our poll modal. Now is the time that we implement the actual voting capabilities. So let's go ahead and do that. And we can do that inside of our poll component. Right now, we only have a question, but we're also going to add a div below that question. That div is going to have a style equal to styles.flexColumn. And inside of there, we want to open a new dynamic block of code where we want to say if we have vote data. In that case, we want to loop over it. So we can say vote data.map. Inside of here, we're going to have each individual answer. So in here, we can simply say answer, and we're also going to get the index of that answer. Instead of the curly braces, we want to have a condition. So we're going to say if no voted, so if the person hasn't voted, in that case, we want to return the following block of code. That's going to be a button. But we have a question mark here. We also need an else. Let's say we also need a ternary else. So just after this, we can add another colon and the parentheses. And inside of here, we are going to have a div. So if we haven't voted yet, we want to vote. So we need a button. Let's render it right here. That button is going to have the style equal to styles.button. It's going to have a key equal to I, and it's also going to have an onClick property where we get an event, and then we want to call the submit vote function. That submit vote is going to get the event and also the answer we want to submit our vote to. Inside of the button, we can simply say answer.option. And now if we have voted, we want to show the results. So I'm going to add a style here and say styles.flexCenter. And inside of there, we're going to have an h2. That h2 is going to have a style equal to styles.mr20, which is going to be margin right 20 pixels. And it's simply going to say item.option. Now below each option, we want to have a line. So right here, I'm going to render a line with uppercase L, and that is going to be a self-closing component. This line is going to represent how many people have voted for that specific answer. So inside of here, we can simply say % is going to be equal to, in parentheses, item.votes, divided by total votes, and then we close the parenthesis and then multiply that by 100 to get a percent. Then the stroke width is going to be equal to a string of 5, and then the trail width is going to be equal to the string of 3. These are just some settings to make our line look better. Finally, below this line, we want to have a p tag that's going to have a style equal to styles.ml20, margin left 20, and in there, we're simply going to show the number of votes that each answer has, so item.votes. Also, we're mapping over these divs, so I'm going to add a key equal to I here as well. Usually, it's not the best practice to add the key equal to I as the number of the element in the array, but in this case, we are not deleting the items, so that's completely fine. And finally, below this entire div, we're going to have an h3 that's going to say total votes is equal to total votes. Great. Let's save it and see this in the browser. I'll try to immediately start a new poll, and there we go. You can see we have 4 buttons, where are you from, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, we still haven't implemented the submit vote function, so if we click on one, nothing's gonna happen. Therefore, that's going to be our next step. We already have the submit vote function here. The last thing we have to do is simply implement it. So, just above our close modal function, we're going to have const submit vote is going to be equal to an arrow function. In that arrow function, we're passing 2 things. First thing is going to be the event, and the second thing is going to be the answer we want to submit our vote to. And we only want to run that if we haven't already voted. So we can say if haven't voted, like this. In that case, we want to open a code block and we want to change our answers. So we can say const new answers is equal to vote data.map. In there, we get an answer. And if answer.option is triple equal to answer.option, you can immediately see that this is not the best practice. We are naming this parameter the same as well as this one. Of course, we have to change it. So I'm going to rename the top one to chosen answer. So if the chosen answer.option is equal to answer.option, in that case, we want to return a new object where we spread the answer and simply set the votes to be equal to answer.votes plus 1. So basically, we're just returning that same object where we added 1 to the number of votes. And then else, what do we do for every other answer that we hasn't clicked on? We are simply going to return that answer unchanged. And that's going to give us access to this new variable of new answers. And what do we want to do with that new answers? Well, we want to set our answers in the context to be equal to new answers. We also want to update the number of total votes. So we can say set total votes. And that's going to be equal to, when in React you're updating the state, you have to do it like this with a callback function where we get the previous number of total votes. So we can add prev total votes and then prev total votes plus 1. And finally, we also want to do the same thing for set voted. That's going to be prev voted, and that's going to be not prev voted. Great. So we are updating all of the states we need to update. And just before we go ahead and test this part out, I've noticed that I have an issue right here on line 57 to 61. Instead of referencing the answer here from the map, I've been specifying item, item, item. That item doesn't really exist. So really, it had to be an answer. Hopefully you caught that, and now we are ready to test this out. This should now be fully working. Let's go ahead and save it and test it out in the browser. Let's do JSM again. You can do something else. Let's open the host control view and say something like, how old are you? And let's do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Start poll. That part works. And let's click 1. And there we go. This is the line I was telling you about. This is the answer here. This is the total number of votes. And this is the percentage of the people that voted. We currently have only one vote, and that one went to the answer 1. That's it. This actually looks great. But now, what is the main problem here? We've just created the poll for one user, for the host himself. But how do we enable the voting functionality for all of the other participants in this chat? That's going to be our next step. Before we go ahead and implement the multiple people polling option, I just wanted to show you what the problem was in action. So I'm going to stop this poll, and as you can see, I've joined as another person, and now we can see 2 different people on the screen. I'm going to click the start poll from the host's point of view, and when I do, as you can see, the poll started just on his screen. The goal is to show this poll to all of the people that are currently in this meeting. And then of course we want to see their results in real time. So let's go ahead and stop this from running and let's get back to our code. To implement this, we're going to go into chat context.ts. Again, I've used that control P, and then in here we have control message enum. These are some options that one user can do, and they're going to trigger something else on somebody else's PC. For example, the host can mute the audio or video of a different person. So our poll is going to be a similar action to those. What we can do is we can simply say initiate poll. That initiate poll is going to be the action number 8. And finally, we want to go to RTM configure. RTM configure is going to be the file that deals with these messages that are not only happening on one person's screen, but rather on everybody else's. At the top, we can import our context by saying import poll context in curly braces from /poll context. Then we can scroll a bit down and we can use a few things from that context. More specifically, const set questions, set answers, and also set is modal open. That is equal to use context, and then we pass in our poll context. Great. Now we can make use of these variables in this file. Finally, we can use Ctrl G to go to line 215. As you can see, in here we have some actions: mute video, mute audio, and so on. Now, the only thing we have to do is add one more else if right here. Right there, that's going to be else if, and we want to check if text1 is triple equal to control message enum dot initiate poll. That is how we're going to initiate the poll on all other devices. And then in here, we want to do some logic. But first, we want to see what this text actually is and where is it coming from. And that's going to be in our host control view. Right here, once we click that start poll button, we don't simply want to set is modal open true to one person. We want to open it for everybody. So we can use a special Agora function called send control message. Inside of there, we can pass the control message enum dot initiate poll. That means that the message we're sending is about initiating the poll. And then, as the second parameter, we can simply pass in our question and our answers inside of the object. We also need to copy this line and also go inside of our poll file right here. And alongside setting the answers, we also want to send another control message to update our poll on each new vote. And in here, we're not going to have answers, rather it's going to be new answers that we're updating right here. Great. Also, notice how we don't have access to the control message enum. That's something that we have to import, and we can do that right here. Import chat context. And we also need control message enum from /chat context. And now from that chat context, just at the top, we can say const send control message, and that's going to be equal to use context, and that's going to be chat context. Great. We have the send control message, we have control message enum, and we are ready to initiate the poll in here to update it, and also to really initiate it once we click the start poll button. So let me show you behind the scenes what this send control message is actually doing. I'm going to go to RTM configure file, and I'm going to search for send control message. Again, we're looking at the code that somebody else wrote, but we as JavaScript developers should be able to read it. So we're declaring a function, more specifically an asynchronous function called sendControlMessage. That control message is accepting one parameter, the message itself, as a string. In there, we are awaiting. Now, this might be a bit hard to understand, but this message is really meaningful. Send message by channel ID. Then we get the channel and we append the message to it. That's basically all that we are doing. But now we also need to pass the data through that message. We don't simply want to mute the call or mute the audio or video. We need to do something, initiate the poll, and then also send some data through it to other users. So to do that, we can first add a new if. We're going to say if message, MSG, is triple equal to 8. Now you might be wondering why a string of 8. And if you remember correctly, if we go to chat context, in here you can see that initiate poll indeed is a string of 8. So here, if the message is 8, then we want to do something, else we're simply going to do what we have been doing so far. So I'm going to pull this await block inside of here. Now, if the message is 8, I'm going to copy this entire part, await, but now we don't simply want to append the message, we also want to plus and then JSON.stringify. What are we stringifying? Well, the object, because now in send control message, we're not simply sending the message, we're also sending the object as data, and we can prove that by going here and take a look. Send control message, a string of 8, and then an object. So going back here, we definitely do have an object as well as the string, and we're stringifying that JSON and then appending it to the string. That way, we'll be able to use it later on. Great. Now that we know that, we can press Ctrl G and go to line 216. There we go. Here we said if text1 is equal to initiate poll. We're basically checking if the second character of our string is 8 and if that is equal to 8. Of course, these need to be strings. So if that is the case, that means that we want to initiate our poll. So let's extract our data by saying const question and answers, and that is going to be equal to json.parse. We get the text and we want to slice from the second character onwards, because first we have 0, 8, and then we have an actual object containing the entire data. So object answers is equal to an array and all of that stuff. We previously stringified it so that we can pass it over here. Now we want to read from that data, so we're doing json.parse. Finally, we can use our context to say set question is equal to question, and also set answers is equal to answers. I noticed that I have a typo here. I don't have set questions. So let's scroll up, and looks like I mistyped it. This was supposed to be set question. And the last thing we want to do is set is modal open to be equal to true. Great. Now, if we've done everything correctly, this code should trigger the modal on everybody's screen. Everybody who is participant in our meeting should be able to see and vote, and we should be able to see the results live. Just before we go ahead and test it out, let's do one final change to our poll. We have to add one use effect. So in here, I'm gonna say use effect. It accepts a callback function and also a dependency array. And we want to re-execute this use effect whenever the vote data changes, meaning whenever another person votes. So I'm going to say if vote data dot length is greater than 1, meaning if somebody voted. And inside of there, we're simply going to say set total votes to be equal to, and we want to map over the vote data. So vote data dot map. In there, we get one item, basically one vote, and we want to take the item dot number of votes for each item. Then we're going to call the dot reduce on that map, dot reduce, and then you want to get the prev and the next element of that reduce, and you simply want to return prev plus next. So this is a complex line, but let me explain what is happening here. We have our array of answers that looks like this. It's an object that has an option that is something, and most importantly, it has the number of votes. For example, 1, and then we can add the second one, which is going to be 2, and then let's say the third has 3 votes. There's a total of 6 votes. So how do we calculate that? Well, first, we're mapping over the vote data, which is this array. We look into each option right there, and we only return the votes. That's simply going to leave us with an array that only has numbers. That's going to make it so much easier to calculate. And then we call the reduce, where we get the previous, which is 1, and also the next, which is 2, and we keep it going while incrementing all of the elements. So that's going to be 1 plus 2 is 3, and then we do 3 plus 3 is 6. And finally, once we get all of that, we want to set the number of total votes to be equal to 6. That's it. Now that we've done all of that, let's go ahead and actually test it out. I have my 2 windows opened. Our host is on the left, and let's say something like, where are you from? I'm going to type something like Los Angeles. Let's do Mumbai, New York, and let's also do New Delhi. Let's go ahead and start the poll. The poll appeared only on the left side, which is still not ideal. Let's go ahead and check what that is about. After I reloaded the page, only a white screen appeared. So let's go back to our code and check it out. I'm going to open up our terminal by going to view terminal, and looks like it failed to compile. It says, seems like the error is on line 75 of host controls. So let's go here, and looks like there is an issue. Oh, more specifically, this part got copied, so we want to definitely remove that. That's not necessary. There we go. Let's see if that's going to fix it. That seems to be fine to me. Let's open up the terminal, compiled with warnings, which is fine, and let's go ahead and give it one final test. To properly test it out, I reloaded all of the browsers. We are right here where we have to choose our display name. I'm going to remove video and audio, and I'm simply going to type our display name. I'm going to do JSM here, join the room, and let's do guest on the right side. In this view, we cannot yet see the settings, so I'm going to increase it a bit, open up the settings, and let's type our original question. Where are you from? Let's do again Los Angeles, New York, Mumbai, and New Delhi. Let's go ahead and start the poll. And there we go. The poll appeared on the right screen. There's some serious technology happening right there. So it's great that we managed to do it using only Agora's built-in function and some basic modifications. There we go. Let's go ahead and try to vote to see if we'll be able to see the votes in real time. I'm first going to vote from the guest's point of view. Let's go for New York. Total number of votes 1, and let's go for New Delhi. There we go. Total votes 2, New York, New Delhi, and everybody can see the results. Great. This can be incredibly helpful with online schooling, such as universities or schools, where teachers have to ask different questions, and also in work-related settings like the meetings and so far, where somebody needs to get everybody's opinion on a topic. There we go. This part is successfully coded out. But again, this is just one extra feature on top of all of the features that Agora gives you right out of the box. In this video, I didn't have a webcam to show you how videos worked, and you can hear my audio through the microphone, so that wasn't necessary, but trust me, everything works beautifully. The final step is to deploy this application and share it with everybody. That way, you don't have to use Zoom, Google Meet, or some other platform. You can really communicate through something that you've built. So let's go ahead and deploy this application. The process of deploying our application is going to be a lot easier than you might have anticipated. So first, we're going to close all the files and folders and simply go to View and then Terminal. We're going to press Ctrl C and then Y, clear it, and then do cd ... to get back into the root of our folder. Then simply type npm start. This is going to run the CLI, and then simply type build. And then choose which platform you want to build for. As you can see, Agora allows you to build the same application on web, Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, and even Linux. So let's go for web. This is going to be a production build, so let's choose it, and there we go. With just a few presses of the enter key, we are already building our app, and we'll be ready to deploy it in a matter of seconds. Let's press enter to continue, and that's it. You can press Ctrl C to leave, clear it, go to JSM chat app, and then now you have a dist folder. This is where your entire application is. Inside of there, we're going to create a new file, _redirects. Netlify and other hosting platforms need this. We're going to type / space / index.html and then 200. Great. Now you can simply right click the dist folder and reveal in File Explorer. Then you can go to the browser and visit netlify.com and log in or sign up. You can go to Sites and then simply drag and drop the dist folder in here. It took just a second to deploy, and before we go ahead and take a look at it, let's go to the main settings and change the name right here to something like JSM Chat App. There we go. Of course, you can use your own name. There we go. I'm going to go to that URL. And as you can see, JavaScript Mastery Community is now live on the web. We can create a meeting. Let's just type meeting for now. And you get live deployed links for attendees and hosts that you can send around. So I'm going to copy this attendee URL and start the meeting as a host. It's going to ask me to allow the microphone and camera. And I'm going to add JSM as the display name. There we go. We are inside of our meeting, and I've just opened a new window with that URL I copied. In here, we're going to join as a guest. And as you can see, you can freely chat with your friends and colleagues. And finally, let's test out the polling functionality. We're going to go back to our host and ask a new question. Let's do something like, what is your favorite programming language? Let's do something like JavaScript, Python, C, and then let's do C++ as well. Let's start the poll. Of course, we're going to vote for JavaScript, and the second person can vote for something like Python. There we go. 1-1, JavaScript, Python. That works great. With that said, we've come to the end of this video. Close to the start of the video, we already had an amazing video chat platform where you can speak with multiple people at the same time and share the screen, as well as chat with each other. Through this video, I've showed you how you can access the codebase and then modify it to add your own things and make it completely your own. In this video, we've added the polling functionality, but then again, feel free to add any feature that you want. And finally, huge thanks to Agora not only for sponsoring this video, but also for making such an amazing software that allows you to quickly and easily build scalable video chat and video sharing applications. That was it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.